BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, warnings of drought in Scotland.
At this present point in time, we're in the process of preparing for the drought issue, but realistically we're hoping rain comes and that prevents us going into any significant water scarcity.
More on that later, but let's start with one of the most seasonal of seasonal veg, asparagus. Traditionally, the spears of this crop are only picked from the 23rd of April, St George's Day, to the 21st of June, the longest day of the year. So it's crucial for growers to have their best produce ready at the right time. Not only that, getting it to market and making sure its quality is perfect can pay real dividends when you're supplying top-end restaurants and catering. Andy Allen at Portwood Asparagus in Norfolk mostly grows his crop for chefs, trading through London's New Covent Garden Market. This year he decided to welcome the whole supply chain to his farm to see how the asparagus they buy from him is grown. Anna Hill joined them.
The other thing is, don't stand on top of the bed, because what you're going to do is then stand on top of the next spear that's coming through.
I'm not sure that made the grade.
Andy Allen, Portwood Asparagus.
Why have you invited them all onto your farm?
I'm trying to learn from them what the chef wants, and also I think it's important that chefs understand how it got on their plates.
You talked about buying the crowns, spending about £7,000 per acre on putting those crowns in the ground. Each plant lasts about 7 years. This season, how is it going?
72% of my cost of production is actually labour. That's gone up 9.7% this year in real terms, including holiday pay and national insurance. These all have to be passed on, otherwise we're not going to be here next year.
My name's Nick Padley. I'm a wholesaler in New Covent Garden Market.
What about the price that Andy gets for his asparagus?
As a wholesaler, we want to do the best job for Andy. We want him to be here for many years to come. There's not any new UK growers starting up. If anything, they're becoming few and far between. We've got a responsibility to the grower, but also to do the right job for our customer as well.
I'm Paul Grimshaw from DDP. We supply restaurants, hotels, households in London mainly. The nature of our customers demand high quality. It's got to be the right price always, and because what they do with the product I think is incredible. Equally, what I think Andy does with the product is incredible. We're all cogs in a chain, and as soon as one breaks, we've got a problem. We've worked together for many years. We're loyal, but we like the product. We like that we can take chefs out and educate them. They will want British ingredients on their menu.
A lot of people buying in the supermarket won't look at the label, and it could be from Peru, it could be from Mexico.
But bite into it. You'll notice the difference straight away. It grows much slower than other countries, if you like. It therefore then has a much more intense flavour, and that's what our customers are buying into.
So, Nick, would you pay more for Andy's local asparagus than you would for an imported asparagus?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. English asparagus will fetch a premium price, and it's just not mass-produced like that you would get imported product from.
We make a song and dance about this every year because the window of the season is so short and we should celebrate it. I'd rather we didn't have asparagus the rest of the year. Same with strawberries. Maybe put a tariff on imported asparagus is have a Trump moment. It would certainly educate people. If you only have British strawberries and British asparagus when they're in season, great. You know, Christmas is great, but Christmas every day, no thanks.
Paul Grimshaw from Direct Delivered Produce there. Now this week we are digging into the world of potato production, none of which would be possible, of course, without healthy, disease-free seed to get the crop started. Growing seed potatoes is a high-value, tightly regulated specialist sector, and in the UK it's largely concentrated in Scotland, where the disease risks are lower thanks to a cooler climate. Europe was a key market for Scottish seed, but Brexit changed all that. The EU's plant protection rules mean the trade is no longer allowed. But as Nancy Nicholson's been finding out, growers haven't given up on resuming exports. Planting was in full swing when she joined one of Scotland's top growers in a Perthshire field.
So Nancy, we're planting a nice piece of land here. We're planting at the moment a variety called Cara, which primarily goes to Egypt. We've got 3 machines getting rid of the stones and clods out of the seed beds that we're preparing, and then 2 planters planting the seeds.
It's a beautiful field of long, straight lines, and crawling around it are all of these tractors.
That's the beauty of global positioning satellites.
And with me is Robert Doig, who's a farmer, director of Caledonia Potatoes, and a member of the British Potato Trade Association. And you mentioned there that this crop would normally go to Egypt. Is it sold ahead? Do you know that's where it's going?
Well, it's sold ahead, but it utterly depends on quality. The quality requirements of the Egyptian market are very stringent. So we have to get everything right here. It's a bit of an all or nothing thing, really, because if they go to Egypt, they're really quite high value. If the quality isn't up to the mark, then they become very low value. So it's a really win or bust kind of deal, which is why I don't like to do too much of it, to be honest. We measure how much of that risk we take here. Just to stand aside here momentarily, Nancy, this is the fuel delivery coming for all these tractors. That's one of the other things that potatoes are very desirous of, is horsepowers and fuel consumption. We do burn a lot of diesel. It's an endless procession, really. Everything just marches across the field like a plague of locusts, if you like. Start at the beginning in a ploughed field, and by the time it's finished, it looks like it's been combed.
Europe, of course, was a very important market for Scottish seed until Brexit. There have been numerous attempts at getting that access back to no avail, but you've just recently hosted a delegation from Europe. What did they want to see?
The delegation was over here to look at our bureaucracy, really, our protocols, our traceability standards, in order to make themselves comfortable that we comply with everything they would want from an importing country.
And there's another tractor just approaching. Presumably little has changed, though, in terms of standards since before Brexit. Is it really a political exercise now?
I think that's being a little bit harsh. The EU takes its importation, soil health and all that kind of stuff seriously enough that they don't import seed potatoes from any third country. So once we became a third country, their rules were relatively straightforward for them. We were a third country, therefore they couldn't import. So we've got to overcome that hurdle. But you're right, the standards are the same. So in broad theory, there is no reason beyond the fact that their legislation doesn't allow it. So we have to reprove ourselves and, if you like, get over the hurdle that we would be essentially, in all proper meaning of it, the first country, third country to be allowed to import.
Any feedback yet on how they might progress?
To the best of my knowledge, and the last I heard, there had been no feedback. But the EU moves slowly, as so many democracies do.
And how important? Are we holding this guy up by standing here?
Clearly we are, but...
How will we move, Robert?
But farming today is much more important than planting potatoes. Look, I think it would make a huge difference to the Scottish and UK seed industries. We are heavily reliant on one or two export markets for our sort of structural capacity. You know, any healthy industry can't be over-dependent on one or two markets.
How optimistic are you that you will be exporting to Europe again?
I think we'd all really like to be optimistic about it. I mean, obviously there's this big hurdle that we would be the first third country to get full access to the market, and we've lost the varieties that we used to export to the EU because we lost the market for them. There would inevitably be a growth phase that we'd have to go through to re-establish that. But potato farmers have to be optimists.
Robert Doig. Well, potatoes are a thirsty crop, and Scottish farmers are being warned to prepare for a possible summer drought. SEPA, the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, has issued a water scarcity alert as 17 river catchments are so low. In England, the Environment Agency says 2/3 of rivers are below normal or lower for the time of year. Many farmers rely on abstracting water from rivers in dry periods, but when levels are low, that's not allowed. We have had some good weather. The Met Office says it was the sunniest April since records began in 1910. But Stephen Field from SEPA says in Scotland it's been dry for a while.
We're seeing rivers at particularly low levels, and that is making us think and put basically various different areas of the country into what we would call alert, just to make farm managers and other abstractors aware of the situation.
Should they be expecting a drought?
At this present point in time, we're in the process of preparing for the drought issue, but realistically we're hoping rain comes and that prevents us going into any significant water scarcity. What we're asking farmers to do is, first of all, check our water scarcity reports that come out weekly and our drought tool, which gives them an indication of the river levels in their particular area. We also like them to check their abstraction equipment regularly to make sure it's in good condition and it's not leaking, things like that. Another thing that we try to get farmers to do is work collaboratively within catchments so that they can stagger abstractions, so that maybe one farmer at the top of the catchment takes it one day, another farm in the middle of the catchment takes it middle of the week, if they don't need to abstract and irrigate every single day, and getting farmers to think more of offline storage, so having those water storage lagoons on farm, build a wee bit of resilience into their farming operation.
Stephen Field from SEPA. If water is going to be an issue for farmers this summer, what are their options? I spoke to two farmers in traditionally dry areas. First, Mark Means, an arable farmer who also grows potatoes and sugar beet on the Norfolk coast. He has 2 reservoirs on the farm.
Since February 26, we have had under 25 mil or an inch of rain in 9 weeks. And a lot of sunshine, a lot of heat, and a lot of wind as well. So the top surface of the soil is very dry indeed.
Is it always this dry on your farm?
No. We're on a moisture retentive soil with a silt, so we've got not a lot of sand in there, but we've got a lot of fine silt, so it absorbs and holds the moisture very well. And normally we would be happy as everything. All this sunshine is brilliant for the photosynthesis for the crops that are growing, but we're just starting to see that the wheat plants are starting to question, do we need that stem? Can we need smaller and shorter leaves? And the sugar beet desperately wants to expand its leaves and things, and at the moment it is quite dry on top.
Can you irrigate on the farm?
For us, we can. We have saline water all around us, so if you imagine you're in the Dead Sea, you would float very well. And luckily for us, when we have winter rainfall, the water and the rainfall, the excess rainfall we have is lighter than the saline water around us. So we actually trap it and then extract it out in the winter time and then feed the crops when we need to carefully with slightly saline water in the spring and in the summer. And this year, we're probably going to be 4 weeks earlier thinking about irrigating our potatoes.
If you start 4 weeks earlier, will you have enough water?
We haven't filled the reservoirs up fully, so we're probably about 80% full this year, and we'll just have to be very careful. We have actually reduced our area this year of planted potatoes that we can irrigate.
Mark Means. Well, Chris Newham is Joint Managing Director at one of the driest farms in the UK, Wilkin & Sons at Tiptree in Essex. They grow strawberries, raspberries and stone fruit.
That whole water resilience piece is absolutely critical for a business like ours, and particularly farming in the part of the world that we're in. So we have no groundwater abstraction available to us. So everything is all about harvesting and storage of water. So everything that we irrigate our crops with is saved from fields, surface water runoff, rainwater that's falling on the roofs of our polytunnels and we're collecting. We're storing it all in our reservoirs and using it subsequently to irrigate our crops with.
For other farmers, it's only relatively recently they've had to think about this sort of thing. What advice would you give people facing warnings about drought, for instance?
I think to think long term. We've had to put a lot of thought and investment into building that resilience. And of course, it's not just capture and storage, it's very much in terms of efficiency of use of that water as well. It's all trickle irrigation. In fact, it goes beyond that. We've adapted Israeli technology. The Israelis are farming in a very dry part of the world, and they have always been very efficient in terms of their use of water. So we've adapted a couple of decades ago now some of their technology in terms of kind of micro pulse irrigation. So it's taking trickle to a whole new level, but it's ultra efficient in terms of water application and usage by the plant.
Chris Newnham. That's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.